Across the country, newly minted graduates are waving goodbye to their campuses, and there's some welcome news to these real-world freshmen. Employers are planning on hiring nearly 20% more college grads this year than they did last year. That's great, but let's be honest, there was nowhere to go but up. It's the new reality for college grads, 85% of which will be moving back in with their parents this summer. Don't change that room, parents. Even if they do secure a job, starting salaries are $10,000 lower than they were a decade ago. And the average college kid is leaving school more than $27,000 in the hole. That's debt, 88% more than in 1993. The silver lining? My next guest says when you are finally able to strike out on your own, he's got a list of cities you should set your compass toward. Joining me now, senior editor at The Atlantic and professor at the University of Toronto, and the man with the roadmap, literally, for college students, Richard Florida. Welcome, Richard. A tough time for college students. Tough time for college students who are entering the market, but some bright spots, I guess, that you're seeing. Where do you think people ought to be going? What are the best cities? I know you've looked at that for where college students can get traction in real work.
Well, for the past few years, it's been a terribly tough time for college kids, loaded up with that debt and coming into a bad job market with lots of folks queued up in front of them. But, you know, one of the things I've always talked about is the single most important decision you're going to make, especially after you graduate college, is to find that city and community that has a vibrant labor market, that has that great first job, but will propel you, to build that network you need of contacts that'll move you through your career in a much more fluid and effective fashion. So for college grads out there listening in, and moms and dads, make sure maybe you want the young one to move home and back to the room with the posters, but picking that right city is more important than the money you spend on college. It's going to propel that career forward.
And what are your top couple of cities that you think that people ought to be focused on?
Well, I'll tell you, the city that's come up time and time again in recent years is Washington, D.C. It's a great place, not only in the nonprofit and political sector for kids who have a social and civic purpose. It has a great tech sector. It has a thriving media and entertainment business, as you know and as others know. The Bay Area, both San Francisco in general, great place to live. Silicon Valley, San Jose for techies. And New York City, it was a little lower than I expected, actually. Came in 5th place, and I think that's because we do the whole metro. We take in Jersey City and Hoboken and New Jersey, where I'm from. We take in Brooklyn and the outer boroughs, but I think Manhattan still remains, for young kids looking for a lot of opportunity, a great place. And then a lot of college towns, a lot of great college towns came in and list, which made us very, very happy to see those there.
Crystal Ball's got a question.
Yeah, I do. Hey, Richard, how are you?
Hey, Crystal.
I was just wondering, how important is that first job out? Because one thing I worry about with students coming out of college and either not moving to the right area or just not being able to find a job or having to take a job for a lot less, how much of an impact does that have on their future career path?
Well, the new Georgetown study that just came out, a variety of research says it has a big effect, that first job. And that's why a lot of kids will move to a more expensive market. They'll move to D.C. or New York or San Francisco, even if they have to pay a lot more for rent or double or triple up, because that sets a salary in place. That said, I think sometimes in the United States we go a little bit crazy. I mean, one of the great things about the American system is there's a lot of flexibility. One young guy who used to work for me said he picked Washington, D.C. when I lived in D.C. and was working at George Mason and in think tanks. He said he picked D.C. because it gave him a wide options of things he could write. He could do public policy work. He could do civic work. Now he has a fabulous band that he's pursuing a musical career. So I think, somebody at 21 or 22 doesn't exactly know where they want to go in life. Many people. It's good to pick a big city with lots of options.
Jonathan?
Richard, that leads into the question I was going to ask. As you said in your initial answer to Matt, that, for folks in the tech industry or media, going to one of those big metro areas would be the thing to do. But what if you're a classics major or an anthropology major or someone who's not in those areas that you talked about? What do you advise them to do?
Get a law degree. No, just kidding.
Yeah, unless you're going to go, start at the bottom of the editorial ladder, which we all know is such a tough place, and probably do an internship for a publishing house and have mom and dad, pay the freight while you're in New York. I think the college towns, and they came up time and time again, and not just the obvious suspects. The Boulder, Colorado is very highly rated. Madison, Wisconsin. Iowa City, Iowa. Columbia, Missouri. And smaller college towns come up time and time again as good places. A great place, maybe to continue to work for a professor, maybe, to be a supervisor in a dorm, or just keep working with your friends until you figure it out. So I think the second choice would be staying in a very good college town where you have a good group of contacts and can figure out your next step.
Matt Lewis, I thought we got rid of you 15 minutes ago, but I'm going to make up for keeping you. I'm going to make up for keeping you this long by forcing you to have a very short question.
All right, a lot of traditional Americans, a lot of average Americans, grow up in a place like Michigan. They don't think that they're going to move to Austin, Texas. Are you essentially saying that this is the new world? If you want a job, you have to move?
It's a new world, but I'll tell you, my wife's from Greater Detroit. I spent a heck of a lot of time in Michigan. Ann Arbor performs, in my estimation, what Austin was 10 years ago, what Boulder has become in the past 5 years, Ann Arbor is. So it's not just geography. It's not just being, in a cold Rust Belt place. Ann Arbor, to my mind, and Madison, Wisconsin, are great options. If you don't want to go to Chicago, where so many kids from Michigan go, in Ann Arbor or maybe a Madison or even a Lansing, perform very, very well. So they'd be good options for you.
Richard, Florida, a little bit of bright, hopeful news for college grads facing a tough market otherwise. Thanks for taking the time to lay that out for us.